you again. So while we wait for our panelists to join us, who I'll introduce you in a moment, I'll set out what this discussion will cover. But in the meantime, please, I'd like to please all welcome Andrew Mashanda, CEO of Stanbic Uganda. Nangula Uaandja, CEO and Chairperson of Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. And Philip Lopokoiyit, CEO of ICEA and also PSI board member and UNEP Leadership Council member. Thank you. So, okay, it's working. So this is this is really a high-level session to discuss transforming the real economy for the sustainable future. So you've heard why we need to do this. Now we'll hear a little bit more about how leaders in the industry are making it happen. So we mentioned how global steps to leverage private finance for sustainable development recognizes the need to really scale up financing to address the climate crisis and the sustainable development goals. This is really to support the world's 8 billion people. This is why we're all here. And how more than 400 trillion in financial assets are allocated during this decade will really affect and play a critical role in determining to what extent real economies are aligned with the SDGs and the Paris Agreement goals. So we've already heard the financial system has an essential role to play, but specifically in this region to address the pressing environmental, social and economic challenges that we face in Africa and the Middle East. Transitioning to sustainable business models will be a critical challenge for the financial sector and real economy actors. So financial institutions can support sustainable projects and help businesses to transform their business models, their practices, their strategies, and to shift to sustainable consumption and production. The panel brings together experts and leaders from the region to discuss the challenges and opportunities for financing the transition. And also, we'll hear about innovative policies, strategies, and initiatives that can drive sustainable development, promote green growth, and address the socio-economic challenges specific to the region. So I'd like to first ask each of you, how did you become interested in sustainability? And you're representing different parts of the financial sector and different coalitions. What, in your view, does the transformation of the real economy really mean in practice? And how do you know that we're making practice? So first of all, Nangula, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Liesel. Sorry.
So go ahead.
Oh, is that okay? Oh.
we'll come back to Nangula, please.
No,
Andrew,
it's
go
fine. Let her go. It's okay.
Nangula.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question. And being in the place where I am, I'm a generalist, not necessarily just in sustainable. But yes, of course, what we need to do is we must make sure that whatever we do it sustainably. And ESG matters, and therefore the drive in that matters. And yes, you asked the question, what does it mean to transform the real economy? And I tell people I'm an auditor, so auditors, we're not complicated, not very intelligent, so I will try to explain this as I will normally try to explain it to my grade 5 child. And I think, to me, transforming the real economy, and the real economy is about what input do we use, how do we source those input, how do we process and transform those inputs from one item to another, how do we consume those inputs, how do we deliver them, and how do we dispose of those inputs. And of course, as human beings, I think transformation is what we have always been doing. Where we are today, and sometimes I reflect and I say, maybe I would have loved to live in the age where we were in the caves. I want to see what that looks like. And maybe when we talk about sustainability, that's probably where we want to go back, saying that we have done a lot of things in development, but maybe we kind of need to go back there, but not necessarily the way it is. So yes, we need to consider, of course, technology matters. How do we transform? Is technology matters. The skills that we have matters. How do we use the skills? The green economy, circular economy matters. And therefore, there is a lot of things that we need to do together at individual level, at organization level, at country level, and at regional level. And then, of course, the progress that we are making, and I looked at that part normally and I said, okay, what progress are we making? And if you look at where we come from again, they say it's about survival of the fittest. And that survival of the fittest is, are we fit as a community, as a people? And am I fit as a person? Are we fit as a country? And are we fit as organizations? And are we therefore adapting to what needs to be done? Adaptability, I think it is something of a trait that is inborn in us as human beings, and adaptability is something that we do not have a choice. We can either do it willingly or we will be forced to do it and to apply it. And therefore, yesterday as I was preparing for this session, I think there is one thing I wanted to check up, and I spoke to my son and I said, hey, for the first time I opened a chat GPT account. So I've been hearing about chat GPT and so forth. So, and I have not gotten there. So last night I thought, okay, I need to figure out something here. Let me find out, and it works. So I think it's about that adaptability. So I'm probably going to go back to it a little bit more often. And then, of course, as organizations, it's about transforming and helping our people to be agile and to make sure that they are ready to face what we need to do. And like I said again, doing it at country level, at regional level, as well as internationally.
Thank you. So Philip, would you agree with that? And how do you see progress on the transformation?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, and I'm really pleased to be part of this session. I think you asked a question initially, how have we gotten engaged with sustainability? And I just wanted to say that as I represent ICEA Group, it was one of the first companies to sign up on the UNEP signatory in Kenya, and that association has continued over a long period of time. And I have participated in various fora, and so I have a personal interest as well with respect to this topic. So with respect to what my colleague has just said here, I agree with her. My definition of the transformation of the real economy refers to really fundamental changes in the physical economy relating to advances in technology, also just advances in changes in consumer behavior, but also evolving business needs and models that have come across. And as an insurance practitioner, just pointing out that the end of that is that it's got to have an outcome of a resilient economy and a sustainable economy. On the insurance end of it, this development means that things like traditional ways of doing insurances and practices are changing as a result of this transformation, and therefore we need to adapt to these changes. And just moving on to your question about how do you see we're making progress, I think I see this in three buckets. I think one has been articulated in terms of data analytics and technology. And I want to say that the transformation has really generated a lot of data and information, and we in the insurance industry have got to find ways of making use of that information. In our role as risk managers, we can use that information to prevent and transfer risk, but also to be predictive in terms of risks. And a specific example that I can talk about is that at ICEA Group in Kenya, recently, 2-3 years ago, we had significant flood risks, and once we put the insureds back in funds, we had to look at how we can mitigate these risks. And we spent time using data analytics. We were able to put up a solution, a flood risk solution. So again, in terms of resilience, it's this industry that was impacted was a tourism industry with lodges, and therefore we put them back into business, creating resilience within the economy, and again, sustainability within the communities that they operate. Two other things that I would throw in really is that in terms of the transformation, it has also generated a lot of new risks. So if we talk about new risks with respect to autonomous vehicles, cyber risks, drones, those are new things that are coming through. On top of that, we're talking about new risks that hadn't been seen before. I think we mentioned about nature risks, we talk about climate risks, and as an industry, we have to be in the forefront of looking for solutions in those risks. And I think the last one as well, in terms of this transformation in the real economy, has got to be in particular with the insurance industry, has got to be the generation of insurtechs, which are really using technology to provide solutions to customers. And the insurance industry has got to find ways of working with these insurtechs in order to provide solutions to the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting examples. And so moving to the banking industry, Andrew, could you tell us how you see it and how you see working with clients and customers for this transformation?
Yeah, definitely a need for some training in technology there. Director of ceremony, I can assure you the dry cough is not what you think it is. This country is very cold, especially when you're coming from Uganda. I think the issue of sustainable finance and the climate transition is something that's become very central to the ways we work as banks. Before we sold products and we made money from products, but we found ourselves right in the middle of humanity that is actually transforming a lot faster than our industry. So we find ourselves having to deliver solutions that actually change or transform humanity. I do a lot of investor conferences right across Western Europe and the US. And when you get to a point where 9 out of 10 questions you're asked have nothing to do with the profitability or return on equity that you've delivered, and as bankers, very proud of. They want to talk more about what are we doing in terms of decarbonization of the planet. But also when you start realizing that there is a real threat to our planet that's actually emerging. And we as financial institutions cannot continue to extend our balance sheets to sectors that are actually destroying the planet. And we have to do anything that we have to do. We have to think of the impact it has on the future of the planet. And that's where we find ourselves today. I mean, our statement of purpose as a Standard Bank Group is Africa is our home. We drive her growth. And I'd like to add to that, we should be driving her sustainable growth and also an inclusive growth. Because more and more going into the future, as the populations are growing, urbanization is increasing, no matter what comforts you have sitting in this room, those impacts are going to start coming to your doorstep. The issues of pollution, decarbonization are going to come to your table. I mean, I just remember last point, Liesel. I used to drive from Malawi through Mozambique into Zimbabwe, which is my home country. And one thing that was, especially when we drove in December, there were two things that were most visible on the roads, or three actually. One, the first one, was the number of young people that were just walking around on the side of the road. Number two was the amount of charcoal that was being sold from village to village to village after village, all the way through to Zimbabwe. And the third thing you saw was the flooding in that part of Mozambique. And you could see the displaced people on the sides of the road. And we cannot remain blind to that as financial institutions. We have to start extending our balance sheet in sectors that are driving sustainable growth for our continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are really clear real-world impacts. And I'd like to dig a little deeper. How can you extend not only balance sheets to sustainable businesses, but to helping existing portfolio companies to make the transition themselves and become more sustainable in their strategies and practices? And what does it mean for your business in how you organize yourselves to achieve the transition?
Okay. First and foremost, one of the things that we've embedded in our business, Liesel, is the fact that ESG is central to everything we do. You know, and the social impact, the environmental impact, the governance issues that are related, every time we lend money are central. In fact, when we get a new transaction coming to the table, the first conversation we have is about impact, ESG impact, because then that determines everything else that we do after that. And what we've done as a responsible corporate citizen is that you find in the Standard Bank Group that we have a sustainability function right across the board. And being in Uganda at the moment, I'm sure many of you will be aware of the energy sector transformation that's taking place there. And also the role that we need to play in making sure that we protect lives and livelihoods, even as financiers into this project. It is how we ought to do business. It's no longer a peripheral activity. It's an imperative strategically for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So Nangula, how do you create the market conditions for a more sustainable future? And what have you actually experienced in Namibia? Are there any examples in the region that you could share that you think would be effective, that could be also replicated elsewhere?
Thank you very much. So I think the first challenge that we normally get, of course, in leadership and looking at where we are, and that is where one has to start, is to kind of face the brutal facts that are facing you. And we are in the world where, yes, we are challenged with sustainability, but for example, in Namibia, we are in a country that is faced with some real socioeconomic challenges. We've got high level of unemployment, we have got high level of inequalities, the second most unequal country in the world. We have got unacceptable levels of poverty for a country of 2.4 million people. And therefore, whatever decisions that you make as a leadership team, of course, as government, our leaders need to make sure that they look at that fact. And those facts sometimes require competing kind of priorities and decisions that you need to make. And therefore, leaders must now say, okay, do I choose this? Do I choose that? And sometimes maybe it's not either, or it is this one and that one. And I want to come to Namibia, and we are faced with the question of where in Namibia we have recently found oil and gas. And we have found it at a time where we are busy driving green hydrogen. And the question comes, Namibia, will you develop the oil and gas that you have found? And is that not something that is contradictory to the green hydrogen project and the environment that you want to protect? And then maybe just kind of interrupting myself and going a little bit back, of course, Namibia is a country where at independence already Namibia says we want to protect our environment, and we are going to put the protection of the environment in our constitution. And we have been really, really driving almost like environmental protection in the way the country is managed. If you have seen how much of Namibia is in protected parks and so forth. And now, yes, we need to protect the environment, but what about livelihood? And those are tough, tough decisions and choices. So yes, the first thing that you need to do is leadership. And then, of course, you have to look at the facts of saying, okay, how much does Namibia contribute currently to the world, to the environment challenges that we face? And therefore, when the question comes, will you develop oil and gas? Will you just go for green hydrogen? And the answer that we have chosen is, how can we do both, of course, sustainably, but how do we do both to make sure that we protect the environment, but also while we protect the livelihood and the lives of our people? And therefore, on the one side, you have got oil and gas that is an established sector. It's one thing that is, somebody say, it will probably not disappear, but yes, we need to transform from there to a green economy. But in the transition period, it's one thing to transition when you are transitioning from something. It's another thing to transition when you are transitioning from zero. And where we are as Africa, it's we are in energy poverty. So how do we transition from energy zero to energy green? And that decision, it's not one that gets taken lightly, but it's one thing that leaders need to take. So yes, I think the decision that we have made is let us go forward and explore our oil and gas so that we can look at after our people, but to the extent that we can solve those problems through a green economy, let us do that. And therefore, we are fast-tracking our green economy. And that started already in 2020 when our government came up with our 2020 green economy paper that needs to be developed. And then, yes, we have come up with a strategy on the green hydrogen that we need to develop. And how, and for example, now the question to me is, how do you build the condition, the market condition that enable that investment? And I really think somebody can look at a paper that was written recently by Professor Hausman. He's a Harvard professor. Harvard University has been working with us as Namibia for the past 3 years. The contract with us is ending round about now, to just help us to build our economy and to build a sustainable economy, because we have realized that the foundation of our economy was not giving us the answers that we need, and therefore we needed to do something. And what he wrote was about what, after we have concluded what we are calling the Hyphen Project, what can the world learn from Namibia? And the few things that, of course, he looked at and what we considered is the leadership that our president, our ministers, and the team that he had took. And for him, forming what he called a Green Hydrogen Council that was then composed of interministerials that are coming from various ministries, sitting together and collaborating and saying, how do we fast-track this project? Of course, for our people, for the environment, but of course, doing it in a sustainable manner for businesses and for everybody. But what we need to do is we need to do it in a collaborative manner, because unlike normally where sometimes government will come and say, this is the way you play, it's important that we engage partners. And those partners are private sector players where we sit on the table. So we go to the market, we do a sounding and find out how can we do that? It's something new to us, it's something new to the world. How can we do that? We in Namibia, we believe in transparency, we believe in competitive bidding, but we don't just want to say, here is a competitive bid. Please help us influence this bidding process as a community so that we can make sure that the answers that we get are responsive to what we need to do. So that engagement was very, very important. After that engagement, then of course, what we needed to do is get a preferred bidder and then work with that preferred bidder saying, how can we support that preferred bidder to deliver? And we thought it would take us 3 months to negotiate that deal. And it actually took us 18 months to negotiate. And it's because we needed to listen to each other. The private sector needed to understand what is important to government and to our people, and we needed to understand what is important to the private sector for them to get the capital. And then, of course, the other things that were probably necessary there, and I know my time is going, so 2 more things is what was important is the development partners that we brought on board. So we formed partnerships with a memorandum of understanding with EU, but getting, for example, the German government that has given us funding for pilot projects so that we can start building the skills, doing some research and development, giving bursaries to our people, and then, of course, building institutions that will help us in delivery. So incentives, yes, are important, but also serving investors in a fast-track process. So yes, there's a few things that we are doing currently, and I think as a government of Namibia, we are on the right route to make sure that the market conditions are responsive to what is needed in the market. Thank you.
Thank you. And the incentives for energy development are, of course, incredibly important. And I think the UN has highlighted how using those incentives, and in many other countries, shifting them from fossil fuel support and subsidies towards clean energy subsidies is going to be critical. And I think this is a great example of how the renewable energy development is also a great opportunity for creation of jobs and skills and access to energy and clean energy and modern energy across society. So thank you. Philip, collaboration in Namibia we've heard about being very important. How do you see collaboration playing out in the sustainability journey?
You can hear me? Yes. Thank you for that. I think I'll say that, and just linking it out to creating the right market conditions. I think for collaboration to be impactful, and I think I have to, borrow significantly from SDG 17, which is really the fulcrum of that is really about collaboration and partnerships. But three things first, three ingredients I will say first. I think one, we want collaboration and partnerships to be innovative, so that brings something new. It should be agile, and therefore we should be able to move fast. As a private sector, we're interested in is speed to market to the products, and lastly, it has to be focused on the consumer. So I think we start from there, that it has those ingredients, and then I think we then talk about what sort of partnerships and collaborations should we, and I can give examples in Kenya, but as an industry, should we develop? I think the first one is that just recognizing that in order to succeed, we need to put all necessary hands on deck in order to deliver the right outcomes, and that will involve getting the right knowledge, technical support. So that's one element that's got to be there within the collaboration and the partnerships. But I think one that I can raise immediately is clearly the public-private sector element, bringing in the innovation and in the efficiency of the private sector, and then looking at the enabling environment that the regulatory frameworks do provide. And I think that partnership can move mountains. I'll just give us a specific example of a product that has been launched in Kenya, which is the livestock index-based solution, insurance solution, and that involved working with a consortium of insurance capacity builders, people who will help on that, reinsurance, but also working with the government, because in order to get in touch with the communities, whether it's the sub-sovereign, the counties, and together with the sovereign government, you need to, in order to move fast, you need the government machinery to do that. That solution monitors the level of pastures, and gives out payouts before the drought actually occurs. And if you think about it, it's really about, again, resilience and sustainability. So I'd say that's an example that I can give. I think the other example that I can give in terms of collaboration is something that's actually going to take some time off on the Friday, and that's about working on a peer-to-peer basis. I think ICEA Line Group, in co-creating the Nairobi Declaration of Sustainable Insurance, and together with other like-minded underwriters, NIPDB present here today, and Africa Climate Insurance. The sitting up and looking ahead on how we can progress that across Africa, and building like-minded support together with multilateral lenders. So this in itself has evolved from 8 underwriters to now nearly 120 across 23 countries in Africa, and looking to set up a fund that's going to deal with what's defined as the usual uninsurable risks like floods, cyclones, and droughts. This sort of partnerships only work if it's too big a risk to be taken by a few people, but working through and collaborating together with other partners, we have a huge opportunity to build the resilience of the people who have been impacted, the communities, and the country at large. And we're talking about big numbers here, with nearly $14 billion of cover by 2030. So that sort of collaboration is something that can really, again, move mountains. I think the last one I would say in terms of collaboration has got to be really in terms of technology and specialist support. And I can give an example as well from Kenya, where for the first time setting up geothermal underwriting. Again, this is very much in line with SDG 7 with renewable energy, and that underwriting is meant to de-risk early stage exploration and therefore create a greater use of renewable energy. That will not have happened without support from specialists based out of the country, internationally. Pahelion have FSD Africa as well here, who helped build that capacity, putting specific training in that sort of sense. So taking advantage of specialist knowledge and ensuring that solutions are derived for some of those sustainable challenges that we have is really going to develop and enhance collaboration. So I'll say, in summary, those 3 elements of collaboration with the ingredients that I had mentioned are likely to significantly improve the collaboration efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're helping to bring some of the specialist knowledge to your clients and customers to help their resilience?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So Andrew, how does a bank work hand in hand with its clients and customers to help them decarbonize and become more sustainable?
Yeah, no, thank you once again, Liesel. I think Philip has done half the job already. I think one of the things that is, firstly, you have to raise awareness, right? Our clients have to understand that for them to be sustainable in the long term, they need to adopt sustainable business practices. We've noticed with global multinationals in particular that are operating across the continent is that these things are already embedded. They produce reports to society every year. It's our large local corporates that are still lagging behind. And we have our work cut out for us, quite frankly. And I think the other thing that I wanted to add to, I think we're working very closely with insurance companies as well to make sure that we are aligned in terms of how we intervene and how we enter into certain sectors. Because if we don't work together, the partnerships that have been mentioned already, there's no single sector that can do this alone. The banking sector, if you look at what's required to date to be able to close the climate risk challenge that we have between this minute and 2030 is $2 trillion. Just to put it into context, that's Nigerian economy plus South Africa plus Egypt and almost double it. That's GDPs. That's what you need to actually close the gap. There's no amount of commercial debt that can actually do it from commercial banks. So we need commercial banks, and I think to Philip's point, multilateral organization, development financial institutions, development organizations who actually bring in a lot of expertise that doesn't exist in the financial sector as well. Bring them to the table with our clients, and we work together on how we do this. I think the other thing also just to, okay, our handlers are telling us we're running out of time. Okay, so let me, let me make it snappy. I mean, the other one is cost of capital. The cost of capital is increasing. Our economies are becoming increasingly fragile across the continent. So we have to find ways of lowering the cost of capital. So when you're borrowing to get into, renewable energy or, climate smart agriculture, where do the insurance companies come in? How do we make sure that we got the right people actually entering into these sectors and being able to drive growth in those sectors? I think the issue of legislation and regulation has already been spoken to. And I think there are sort of other fragilities that are within our economies that I'm not going to get into, because I believe we also have a Q&A after this. But I think from a Standard Bank perspective, we've committed about just over $1.5 billion over the next 3 to 5 years that's focusing only on renewable energy across Africa. So that's our commitment to that. And we are looking for partners that can work with us and make sure that we get renewable energy going on the continent. Thank you, Liesel.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there anything, we often hear the challenge of SMEs accessing financing. Is there anything you can say about that in this context?
Yeah, SME financing is a challenge across the continent. Mostly governance, and most of our SMEs start off with a great idea, but they don't have the skills and the capacity to actually carry through that idea. So if you look at what we are doing as a Standard Bank Group, we've created foundations and business incubators across the continent where our focus, in partnership with development organizations, are training SMEs. We've created virtual boards for them. Like I sit on a couple of boards of SMEs in Uganda where we're actually trying to help them on how to run a business. Because if we can improve the institutions that we are creating, we're also creating the future economy for the continent. But also we can embed ESG very early on in the business, right from the onset. And then as we make them ready to become bankable or investor ready, we've actually embedded these principles. I mean, we've seen with the large local corporates that, we are chasing them, because they become too big, and some of the practices that they require to change their businesses actually require a lot of investment. Even if it's manufacturing, clean energy, and so on. So SMEs for us are a huge focus area to try and just make sure that we create the future economy on the right principles. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. So Nangula, coming back to you, how can leaders ensure that their organizations are evolving quickly enough to really meet the new expectations for a green, sustainable, inclusive economy?
So I will try to make that answer very short, because normally, of course, you've got all these things, visionaries, apologies. So we've got our normal things of visionary, strategic, and so on. Somebody recently, hello? So somebody recently said something at a conference I attended and said, to go fast, you do not necessarily need to go alone. So you can go together and be fast at the same time. And therefore, agility is the one thing that we need today, because time is one thing that we do not have. And I think we all know that. And therefore, one thing that I do is, in my job, of course, really having, trying to transform our economy, trying to be a policy advocacy is one thing that I do. And when I face leaders and I ask questions, why are we not doing A, B, C, D? Then I hear, no, we will include it in our next 5-year strategic plan. We are working on this. Oh no, this determination was made in 2018. The next one is coming. And I think what we need to do is, like I say, we need to be agile. And therefore, my answer normally is, of course, I said, there's a Bible, there's a constitution. If it is in those two documents, let's put it here. If it is in any other document, we created it today, we can change it. Can we just challenge ourselves to do the right thing, to do it in a sustainable, fast manner, so that we can deliver what we need to do? And I think that's what we need to build as leaders.
Thank you. It's easier said than done, but so Philip, what is the insurance view on both through investment and underwriting? You've mentioned some examples already, but what do you see as the main challenges or barriers as well as opportunities?
Thank you, and I'll try to be quick as well on that. I think just in terms of investments, I think it's for insurance players to understand that risk with respect to that investment, in particular for certain sectors, the risks are different. If we say agriculture, for example, it's not the same way as in another sector. I think that further to that, when it comes to underwriting is a key component in terms of de-risking the transformation in the real economy, and we are building that into our underwriting capabilities such that we're able to price those risks accordingly, but also innovate in terms of that process. I think in terms of the barriers that we see, that I think some of them have already been said. I think lack of finance, and I think it's very good to hear my colleague talking about how they're empowering through the green economy, and also just taking advantage of multilaterals, IFC, to set that rolling, and that is then to be extended to the insurance element. So lack of finance is one barrier. I think lack of awareness in terms of actually what financial awareness. Insurance penetration is very low in Africa. We talk about 2 to 3% in sub-Saharan Africa, and not as the financial inclusion is not like the same way the banks is. So just working with them, enhancing financial inclusions, and there's been some very good stories in Kenya, for example, with M-Pesa mobile money that has generated a lot of awareness, and I think it's up to the insurance sector to take it on to the next level. I think those for time purposes, I'll say those are the barriers that I can highlight for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. So I think we're running out of time, although the timer has gone black, but I assume we're running out of time. But if we could have this quickly, sort of 30 seconds, if you could say what is some you've already mentioned some examples, if you have anything more to add about the potential examples that can be taken across Africa and Middle East. And also, what would you like people to remember? If they remember one thing from our discussion in this panel, what would it be? Thank you. So starting with Andrew this time.
Okay. Procedural justice. And I mentioned it earlier, we say Africa is our home, we drive our growth. And I don't think that belongs to Standard Bank alone. It belongs to all of us. And that growth has to be across borders. And I think sometimes the assumption that is made is that the problems are unique to one jurisdiction. Because we work across many jurisdictions, we often find that countries are grappling with the same problems. They are not sharing legislation, they're not sharing notes on some of the successes that they are achieving in each of these countries. So Africa is our home. We drive our growth.
Thank you. Philip?
I'll say that let's borrow with pride across the progress that's been made across other sectors, other markets. A lot of what we've discussed can be scalable, whether we talk about geothermal, whether we talk about flood risk modeling, whether we're talking about index-based livestock insurance solutions. It begins with us, and we we can share those learnings right across Africa, Middle East, and I'm certain that we'll make leaps and bounds with respect to sustainable insurance and the sustainable journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Nangula.
Thank you. So I think it's really about, we need to stop approaching things as if it's a zero-sum game. It's not either or, and that is normally for me, it's my new concept. It's this and that. We can protect the environment and be profitable at the same time. And therefore, let us find ways to make it work.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've heard it all here today. I think part of the issues raised, including around the cost of transition, lifting people out of poverty, and helping clients and customers on their climate change resilient and low carbon journeys. So incentives for renewable energy is important, and also the decision taken by banks, insurers, and investors, which will really affect the companies in Africa and help them to support the climate nature objectives and, of course, social goals. So we just start at the start of deploying capital for sustainable development in the transition of the current context. So thank you all very much today for sharing with us your thoughts, and thank you for listening, for your time.